Throughout the years, Nintendo made a lot of great video games and consoles, but once in a while, some of their products didn't do so well. For example, the Wii U sold a little over 13 million consoles worldwide. Compare that to Nintendo's other consoles. When a product does poorly in sales, a company usually does layoffs, but the Nintendo president at the time, Satoru Iwata, wanted to avoid layoffs by taking a 50% salary cut to help pay for employees' salaries. He said a fully staffed Nintendo would have a better chance of rebounding. Honestly, this was a good decision by Iwata, and I wish more gaming companies would follow in Nintendo's footsteps when it comes to business decisions. Anyways, even though Nintendo's Wii U only sold 13.6 million consoles, there was another console that just sold less than a million units. This is the Virtual Boy. The Virtual Boy is a 5th generation video game console developed and released by Nintendo in 1995. Designed by Gunpei Yokoi, the man behind the legendary Game Boy and Game & Watch. At the time, the Virtual Boy sounded good on paper. It was going to be the first portable console capable of displaying true 3D graphics. There were a lot of high expectations for this console, but the console only sold a little over 700,000 units, despite Nintendo of America boldly projecting sales of 1.5 million and more. It's been 30 years since the release of the Virtual Boy. For this video, I'll go over the history and why the console didn't do so well in the market, and what I believe is that the Virtual Boy honestly isn't all that bad. Let's get started. Before diving into the Virtual Boy, I wanted to point out that Nintendo was involved in 3D gaming 8 years before the Virtual Boy was released. October 21st, 1987, Nintendo released the Famicom 3D system, only available in Japan. This headset gave the illusion of 3D by using liquid crystal shutters that rapidly switched on and off to deliver 2 separate images, one to each eye. The system was never popular. Part of the reason why was because it was kind of big and awkward to put on your head, and only 7 games were supported for that system. The only 3D game that made it to America was Highway Star for the NES. Their American version was called Rad Racer. This game was packed with standard cardboard glasses that used red and blue plastic lenses. During that same year, the company Sega wanted to join in on the 3D too. For any American that owned a Sega Master System were able to purchase the Sega 3D glasses. The device was very similar to the Famicom 3D system, except the size was less bulky. And just like the Famicom 3D system, this accessory creates the illusion of 3D graphics in games which support it. It was designed by Mark Kearney, the same guy that made the popular game Marble Madness. The device was compatible with 8 games. A disadvantage is that it halves the effective frame rate, which some users can perceive as flicker. But the advantage was that the design was very comfortable, which can have players play games for several hours. But Sega wasn't just focusing on 3D home console gaming. In 1991, Sega wanted to bring 3D gaming to the arcades. As home console graphics were becoming better, arcade manufacturers had to stay one step ahead. Sega released Time Traveler in arcades, created by Rick Dyer, the same guy that made Dragon's Lair. He presented this arcade game as the world's first holographic video game. When you look at it, the live action characters appear to be holograms presented in full 3D and visible from any angle, but the effect was merely just an optical illusion created from a huge curved mirror and a standard television set. The gameplay is alright. Unfortunately, the game was more of a novelty and quickly died off. Sega never produced or got involved in any other hologram arcade game ever again. But that didn't stop Sega from trying to make another virtual reality 3D product. Sega revealed the Sega VR at Winter CES. This device is basically a virtual reality helmet for the Genesis. The Sega VR was a visor that consisted of a stereoscopic video display and stereo headphones. Since the unit plugged directly into the Genesis video and audio outputs, gamers didn't really need TV sets to play games. When using the device, it gives the illusion that the gamer was immersed into the game. Sega planned the release date at the end of 1993, but then it got pushed back to 1994. But then, it just disappeared into existence, never appearing in any stores. So what exactly happened? Well, Sega officially claimed to have terminated the project because the virtual reality effect was too realistic, so users might move while wearing the headset and injure themselves. However, Tom Kalinske, the president and CEO of Sega of America at the time, stated that the system would not be released due to reports of inducing motion sickness and severe headaches in users. It wasn't until about a year later that Nintendo wanted to take on the challenge of making a console capable of displaying stereoscopic 3D graphics. Why did Nintendo decide to make the Virtual Boy? Well, we have to go back to 1838. England inventor Charles Wheatstone made a device that used a pair of mirrors and two specialty prepared pictures to provide the viewer with the illusion of viewing a three-dimensional object. This was called the stereoscope. There's a clear link between the stereoscope and the Virtual Boy. Both technologies allow the illusion of seeing an image as if it had distance, which allows 3D perception. They also trick the human eyes for the purposes of entertainment. Unfortunately, not much information is available as to why Nintendo became so interested in developing the Virtual Boy. Was Nintendo seeing VR gaming the future for video games? Or did Nintendo want to tap into an unchallenged market when it comes to VR gaming? Let me know in the comment section. However, in 1991, a popular book was released in Japan going over virtual reality. The book is called What's Virtual Reality by Hattori Katsura. Maybe this book has some influence on Nintendo, but this information is anecdotal. Meanwhile, Nintendo had a very close relationship with Argonaut Software at the time. The founder at the time, Jez Sand, helped further develop the Super FX chip for Nintendo's SNES platform. The graphical chip helped allow for real-time 3D polygonal graphics. A good example is Star Fox. Nintendo saw how successful this was and wanted to pursue more hardware projects with Argonaut. Nintendo and Argonaut started working on a development of a VR machine called Supervisor. Not that supervisor, this supervisor. Nintendo reportedly invested $1 million on the device, which included motion tracking, but out of nowhere, the Supervisor project was cancelled. But how far along in development was the Supervisor? Well, there was no physical evidence, prototypes, photos, or videos of the device, so it's difficult to know if the Supervisor was ever being close to finishing. According to the Metro article, Jez Sand claimed that a guy called Mr. Gunpei Yokoi cancelled our project in favor of the Virtual Boy, which we used to call the Virtual Dog because it was so bad. He made a bet in the wrong direction, cancelled our project, and his one was awful. Jez Sand also claimed that Nintendo was working on two VR devices at the same time, Supervisor and Virtual Boy, but take this information with a grain of salt. But the evidence does make sense. Nintendo president at the time, Hiroshi Yamauchi, was known for encouraging employees to compete against each other when making games and hardware. So it is possible that Nintendo had two VR projects running at the same time. The development of the Virtual Boy's hardware began with the creation of the Scan Linear Array. The SLA used a one-dimensional vertical column of LEDs and a rapidly oscillating mirror to create the illusion of a two-dimensional rectangular display. This is the key piece that made the Virtual Boy possible. The SLA used red LEDs because red LEDs have been in production since 1968 and were inexpensive technology. This fits well with Gunpei Yokoi's philosophy, which is lateral thinking with wizard technology, that toys and games do not necessarily require cutting-edge technology. Novel and fun gameplay are more important. The other main color in the Virtual Boy was black. Gunpei wanted games to have a black background to allow users to experience limitless space. Gunpei wanted the background to be completely dark so that the screen would feel as if it stretched out in the distance. Like the Game Boy, Gunpei saw an opportunity for the Virtual Boy audience to include older people and not just children. Gunpei also had a strong opinion that TV-based games had reached their limits and saw stereoscopic 3D the next big step for video games. In the beginning, Gunpei wanted to create a head-mounted virtual reality game console, codenamed VR32. He envisioned a third category of gaming, consoles, handhelds, and the last one, wearables, where a player could strap on the console to their head and play on the go, but this was going to be an issue. The issue was electromagnetic fields. There was concerns from Nintendo that players could get sick from EMF exposure. To fix this problem, Nintendo added metal shielding to the VR32 to block out EMS. By doing that, the added weight from the shielding made the headset too heavy to wear on the head with a strap like a pair of giant goggles. According to ARS Technica article, Nintendo decided to design a shoulder mount that allowed players to wear the VR32 on their head while distributing weight to the neck and shoulders. But Nintendo felt like there would be a bunch of safety concerns that needed to be addressed. In the end, the shoulder mount was not commercially released, and it might not even have been necessary since the Virtual Boy did not in fact ship with any added metal shielding. With all these fears and future lawsuits that Nintendo doesn't want to get involved in, the final result was the VR32 becoming a tabletop unit on a stand. Gunpei Yokoi's original designs have already been altered, and it made him a bit disappointed, but Nintendo had another problem that they need to figure out: market relevance. You see, the 3DO and the Atari Jaguar got released in 1993, and a year later the PlayStation and Sega Saturn would also be available to the public in 1994. Nintendo knew that the Ultra 64 wouldn't probably be released until 1996, so Nintendo decided it was time to release the Virtual Boy in 1995. Gunpei had mixed feelings about it. He knew the product wasn't ready, he had internal doubts on the system, but Nintendo went ahead with the Virtual Boy release on July 21st, 1995. Later on, it was released in America on August 21st, 1995 at the price of $179, but was quickly lowered to $159 in October. Shortly afterwards, the system was released in other countries like Brazil, Mexico, and Canada. The Virtual Boy sold around 140,000 units in Japan and 630,000 units in the United States. The Virtual Boy was discontinued in Japan in December of 1995. It only lasted 6 months, but there were higher sales in the United States and the Virtual Boy continued to be sold in 1996. But then, sales were declining, the price dropped down to $99, and around May to August, the Virtual Boy was discontinued. 2 games were supposed to be released for the system, Bound High and Dragon Hopper, but those games never saw the light of day. So why was the Virtual Boy quickly cancelled? Well, some speculation was that the Nintendo 64 was planning on being released soon, so it made sense to spend and use up all the resources to help with the 64 console than the Virtual Boy. The second reason for the early cancellation was that the Virtual Boy did not meet sales expectations with its systems and games. Let me briefly go over the console itself and library of games. The system consists of 3 major components: the display, the stand, and the controller, which also serves as a power source through using 6 AA batteries contained in a detachable battery box or an optional AC adapter attachment that was sold separately. The games are stored in a 60-pin plastic molded cartridges that contain game software code and ROM. So how are the games? Well, only a total of 22 games have ever been released for the system. 8 titles were exclusive to Japan, 3 titles were exclusive to North America, the remaining 11 were released in both regions. Honestly, the Virtual Boy has a good amount of variety of games in a small library. You have puzzle games, action, sports, shooters, even a fighting game. Some games utilize the stereoscopic 3D effect really well. Like the game Wario Land, the main character Wario has the ability to jump between the background and foreground at certain points. You can also see Mario doing the same thing in the game Mario Clash, where Mario is in the background throwing Koopas at different enemies. This next part I want to go over the US marketing of the Virtual Boy and its involvement with Blockbuster. For anyone watching this video that was born after 2007, a Blockbuster is a home video rental shop but later became a public store chain featuring video game rentals as well. The company defunct in 2014, but there's still one last location still in operation in Bend, Oregon. Anyways, Nintendo decided to partner up with Blockbuster and NBC. A $5 million campaign promoted NBC's late 1995 lineup alongside the Virtual Boy. American viewers were encouraged by TV ads on NBC to rent the console for $10 at a local Blockbuster. This affordable price brought in a lot of customers wanting to check out the Virtual Boy. Upon returning the system, renters received a coupon for $10 off its purchase from any store. The promotion included 3,000 Blockbuster locations and sweepstakes with prizes including trips to see the taping of NBC shows. While the Virtual Boy was a popular device that people rented out for the weekend, in the end, the rental system proved harmful for the Virtual Boy's long-term success, allowing gamers to see just how non-immersive the virtual reality was. By mid-1996, Blockbuster was selling its Virtual Boy units as low as $50 each. The Blockbuster marketing campaign overall was considered a failure at the time. The last part I want to go over is that players reported getting headaches while using the device. When you look at the system, it's probably a no-brainer that the screen's close proximity to the eye would cause issues. When you stare directly at the screen for a certain amount of time, it will cause eye strain, and this is certainly linked to headaches. I mean, the warning labels say it all. The attempt at 3D was lackluster at best, and having it in an enclosed space can begin to mess with your eyes. In a 2023 article, there are concerns that VR could mess with our perception, and the same was true in 1995. Now, is the Virtual Boy the worst Nintendo console ever made? I would probably have to say yes, but is it the worst console ever made? Definitely not. If you just compare the Virtual Boy to other consoles in the 1990s, I would argue that the system is a lot better when you do a side-by-side comparison. But that's just my opinion. If you want to learn more additional information on the Virtual Boy, I highly recommend reading this book, Seeing Red by Jose and Ben. If you made it to the end of this video, see you next time and thanks for watching.